not a date plus 7. This is first 4 weeks.
Oh, it's 4 weeks. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it would be date plus Hulu. It would be live viewership.
Date plus second, third, and fourth dates. Assuming you're Netflixing and chilling. That's why.
Oh, no, I did not.
Oh, by the way, did you see that Cardi B has called for action on the government shutdown?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
Cardi B, presidential historian, oft political pundit. She has added her voice to the escalating showdown, which indeed today escalated as there seems to be a war of publicity stunts. Although I will be able to work in a relevant political take into our main discussion today, because Axios has a great article about how many antitrust questions that incoming Attorney General William Barr got, indicating that the space between Washington and Silicon Valley, as we will discuss by way of Tim Cook today, indeed draws ever closer.
We also should note that if you lose Cardi B, you lose the nation.
I mean, you at least the Bronx.
Certainly the Bronx. Yeah. I don't think that would be exaggerating. It's crazy times. On our bonus show, which goes out to the co-executive producer tier and above, we noticed 5 years ago a bunch of privacy violation stories, all related to Edward Snowden. And it hit us because what we're doing on those shows is looking back at the lineup from 5 years ago, right?
Gotcha.
What hit us was the government has successfully pivoted away from responsibility for violating your privacy. They have 5 years ago, when there was a Snapchat, Snapchat's leaking your phone number story, it was, and the bad consequence of this is government surveillance. Today, that story is, and the bad consequence of this is they have your privacy now and can sell it to advertisers. Like government don't enter into it anymore. That Snowden related conversation just fizzled.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a couple of reasons for that, and I don't know whether or not I have time to get into any of them, considering.
We should probably we pick it up after the.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. We miss Sarah, but we'll do the show anyway. Are you ready?
Yes.
Then let the games begin. Oh, wait. I need to do one more thing, and it does not involve a reference to Taylor Swift. I hope I can pronounce this person's name right. I'm going to apologize in advance. All right, here we go. In 3, 2. Tom DiGianvittorio Jr. has supported Independent Tech News directly for 5 years. Be like Tom. Become a DTNS member at patreon.com/DTNS. This is the Daily Tech News for Thursday, January 17th, 2019 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
From the mesmerizing shores of Lake Merritt, I'm Justin Robert Young.
And sitting under a very dark cloud, I'm Roger Chang, the show's producer.
That's not just the dark cloud of his life, folks. It's literally been raining for like 6 days here in Los Angeles. By the shores of Gitchigumi is what you made me think of there, Justin. I don't know. I haven't thought of that in a long time.
No. I just sit here and pay homage to the lake in your honor here.
Thank you. Yes, it is my lake after all, and I'm glad you keep an eye on it for me. We are going to talk about Tim Cook's plea for privacy regulation and whether it's self-serving, or if not, how much it is self-serving. Let's start with a few tech things we should know.
Microsoft has promised to use $500 million to address housing issues in the Seattle region. Microsoft will loan $225 million at below-market interest rates to developers of workforce housing on the east side of Seattle near Microsoft. $250 million will go toward market-rate loans for construction of affordable housing, and $25 million will be donated to services for low-income and homeless residents. It comes as a result of work by former Governor Christine Gregory's Challenge Seattle's organization, which also is working with other area businesses like Boeing, Amazon, and Alaska Airlines.
A paper in Science Robotics details how Swiss scientists have trained a neural network in a computer simulation to figure out how to get a robot dog back on its feet after a fall, and it works in the robot dog. The training was done in simulations, which made it much faster. They just used a typical PC, so they saved on computing resources. And when the results of the training regimen were loaded into the actual robot, it caused the dog to recover from a fall 25 times faster, run 1.5 times faster, and be able to roll over and get back up after being pushed over. The robot is called Animal. I don't know if it's a tribute to Ellie Goulding or not.
And that is Mal as in M-A-L, not M-A-U-L, in case you were terrified.
Good point. Fair point.
Google announced that it was increasing pricing for the G Suite services for the first time since launching in 2006. G Suite Basic Edition will increase $1 to $6 per user per month, while G Suite Business Edition increases $2 to $12 per user per month. Pricing for G Suite's enterprise offering remains unchanged. The new pricing goes into effect April 2nd, 2019.
Everybody's raising their prices. Inflation.
Price going up.
Let's talk a little bit more about Europe's copyright directive. We haven't talked about this in a few weeks, so let's update you. They're still working on the final wording. If you remember, we talked about this in September. The copy directive passed, but in Europe's way of doing things, it's taking a little while to get to become a law. Google has taken issue with the directive and put out a warning of what its search would look like in Europe if Article 11 of this new copyright directive goes into force. Article 11 is the one that gives publishers the right to demand paid licenses for the use of snippets of stories, right? So saying like, look, if you use any of the words from our story, you got to pay us for that. Otherwise, all you can do is link. Well, Google's test screenshots shared with Search Engine Land show a page of results for latest news. So somebody searched latest news. The results have no images, no headlines, because that would be considered a snippet, and only the names of the news sources and timestamps. So like Daily Mail, 1:17 p.m. with no other information. The legislation is in closed-door negotiation right now between the European Commission, Council, and Parliament. The European Council will vote on Friday, January 18th, on the directive. They can make changes to the wording. That might be why Google's out there making this push right now. The directive would be followed by negotiation if it passes that January 18th vote with the European Parliament starting January 21st, and then a final vote would happen sometime in March. If it passes all of that, it doesn't go into law until all the nations pass it sometime in 2021.
So this is them trying to demonstrate that they would not have a product, right?
I mean, it's a little bit of a scare tactic, but it's basically saying if we wanted to be the most conservative followers of this directive, this is what we'd have to do to make sure we didn't step on anybody's toes.
And part of that is that Google fears that I think that they do have reason to assume that they should play as conservative as possible to this kind of regulation, right? Like,
I mean, they're Google. They got a lot of cash. They fight in the courts all the time. If they felt like it, they could put out headlines and claim that this is, a fair. They don't have fair use in Europe, but that this is a fair way of displaying it. And it's not necessarily a snippet because it's a common name, et cetera, et cetera. Google has all kinds of AI. They could do some processing where they change the wording. And so they get across the gist of what they're linking to without actually using the exact wording, et cetera. There's all kinds of things they could do to make this more usable. This is them being obstinate and saying, well, you know what? We're not going to do anything. This is what you want. This is what you get.
I will defend Google here. I do think that yes, this is them saying, all right, we don't have a product. You don't get the traffic. This is a lose-lose for everybody. I think that they are trying to demonstrate that, but I don't know if they're in the wrong to do so. The more that they challenge, the more that they invite further regulation, and whether or not they are exactly complying with this one, then the next round of it might be more restrictive, and they would rather make a deal. I think the reason why they're doing this is they want to show the forces that are pushing this to say, look, you like the traffic that we give you. You just don't like the fact that people don't go to your site by reading too much of it on our site. So let's show you what zero looks like.
Yeah. It's a threat, right? And I don't even disagree with anything you just said. I don't think this is what Google actually does if they lose this fight.
No, I think they shut down news if they lose this fight.
Yeah, they might do that. They might, but then they still have to deal with regular search results as well, which is what this page is showing.
Sure. I mean, then they can depreciate news search results to the point where they don't show sites that they feel like they can't legally.
Mm-hmm.
Fossil makes 14 different Wear OS devices, and today Google announced it is acquiring $40 million worth of Fossil's smartwatch IP, as well as members of Fossil's research and development team that support that IP. Google told Wearable it's getting, quote, new product innovation that's not yet hit the market, unquote, that came along with Misfit when Fossil acquired it in 2015. Fossil is finishing development of the product and will make it available on its existing lineup. Google says the features and benefits aren't in the category today, so it acquired it in order to be able to make it available to other partners.
This is a really interesting move. Fossil has been one of Google's best partners on the smartwatch scene. Fossil actually created a great R&D department that came up with some features that Google think will distinguish Wear OS devices from Apple Watch and Fitbit and Garmin and all the others out there. And so they bought it. They said, great, Fossil, we'd like to buy that so that we can give it to Motorola and Samsung. And well, Samsung may not be using Wear OS so much, but yeah, they want to be able to give it to their partners so that they can stand out as the platform operating system. I guess there's really not that much to discuss here. It's not that controversial. I think it's notable, though, as a move that only a company the size of Google could make, to go to one of their partners and go, oh, you invented something great? We'll just buy that portion of your company, please. Thank you very much. And Fossil's like, great, we'll take your money and we'll keep using the technology we developed and you'll spread it far and wide and we all win.
I do wonder why Google doesn't want to just make the Google version of their own hardware for the watch, though.
Well, see, that was my first idea with this, is like, oh, they want to make this the Google Pixel Watch, right? Or whatever they would call it. But then when they say they're giving it to partners, I'm like, well, maybe not so much. I guess that makes sense to just get it out there. But I wouldn't be surprised if you're right, Justin, if that's not also part of this.
Well, I guess that it was, when I read this, I was like, well, this feels like more of a Google 2014 kind of move, other than a Google 2019 kind of move, in that people have raved about the Pixel. The Pixel, the more that Google has done their own hardware, the more people seem to like it.
All right. This is one that is both wonderful and sad. MasterCard has a new policy for dealing with free trials. For MasterCard to authorize a credit card hold for a free trial of a physical product subscription. All right, so we're not talking about Hulu, we're not talking about Netflix, we're talking about Stitch Fix, we're talking about Bomi Box, we're talking about Pop Sugar, any of that stuff where you subscribe to something and you get a physical thing brought to you. For those kinds of subscriptions, merchants will have to agree to some new conditions. Before the first charge can be made at the end of the free trial, merchants must notify customers by email or text that the free trial is coming to an end. That message must include the amount of the upcoming charge and instructions on how to cancel the service. The merchants must also agree to send a receipt for every charge after that, which will also include instructions for cancellation. So there's a couple things. First of all, it's just physical stuff, not online services. MasterCard says they might extend this to online services, but they want to start with the physical subscriptions. And second of all, even though MasterCard says they'll have to get your approval before they keep charging, everything I've read basically says they have to notify you. And I think if you don't respond to the notification, then the charge can continue. So I don't think you can not take action and not get charged, but they do have to notify. They do have to tell you, like, hey, you're about to get charged. Here's how to cancel if you don't want to.
I would take a wild guess that the reason why the move is made here is because they have had a lot of chargebacks and disputed charges based on things like this. But part of me thinks, based on my own spending habits, this is going to crash the economy as we turn into subscriptions that last 6 months. I feel like are 5% of my own expenditures.
The salvation is that most people don't read their email and forget that they got text messages. So even though they're going to get these notifications, a lot of people would be like, oh, right, I should probably cancel that. I'll get to that next month. And then MasterCard will be able to stop chargebacks. Like, well, you knew you got the text message, you got the email, so I don't know if you can really claim a chargeback on that. I love this because it has all of the trappings of a government program. Like, they're going to enforce new rules without involving the government in any way. And if this catches on, I would assume Visa would step in and probably offer some similar sort of protection for people.
It also creates, for MasterCard, a little bit more of a proactive approach. I mean, they are not the card that deals with chargebacks, right? In general, they don't like doing it. They don't respond as favorably as other cards like American Express or something like that. So this is them just saying, all right, let's eliminate one more headache for ourselves.
Yeah. It's not perfect, but it's better.
Jeff Bezos. You ever heard of him?
Steve? No, it's Jeff.
Yeah. He's opening up the invite-only elite gathering called Machine Learning, Automation, Robotics, and Space, aka Mars, to the public. Now called Mars. The conference will be held in Las Vegas from June 4th through the 7th. So far, all the workshops and demos listed are from Amazon. The speakers are almost all from the academic world, like MIT's robot-human interaction specialist Kate Darling and UC Berkeley's roboticist Ken Goldberg. You can find out more at remars.amazon.com.
Yeah, you're not going to see Google join this willingly. They have to be drag kicking and screaming into this. You're not going to see an Apple joining this. This is an Amazon conference, right? It entertained me to think, why don't they have it in Jackson Hole? Why don't they have it in Davos? Why don't they have one of those elite places like they were having their secret AI conference before? Oh no, they're going to have it in Las Vegas. But of course, you got to find some place that has enough hotel space, and that's Vegas. Fine. I think all in all, though, outside of those two thoughts, this is a positive thing because you'll get more AI presentations. It certainly is going to help Amazon, but it also can probably help a lot of people because it's opened up. So I'm glad they've opened it up to other people.
I think it's smart to open up in 2019. I don't know exactly what the threshold where I would bat an eye at somebody starting a conference. There are so many that happen on a constant basis that I think that this is just makes sense. And you want to know what? I'm glad Jeff Bezos has something to busy himself with.
Occupy his time other than counting.
Let's just say that 2019 has been the dark side of New Year, New Me for Jeff.
Hey, yeah, exactly. He can go to Vegas, and what happens in Vegas for Jeff will stay in Vegas.
Unless the Inquirer gets it.
I do wonder what the cosplay at Remars is.
You get to be one of those Mars drones and just like wander around the floor.
And people are like, no, it's not Mars. Never mind. All right. Have I Been Pwned founder Troy Hunt published a blog post outlining a data set seen on the filing sharing service Mega that Troy is referring to as collection number 1. It's important to understand, if you've heard of the story, it's not a data breach. It's a collection of data from previous breaches. So we're not talking about new stuff here. What's significant about this is it's all been collated together to make it easy for hackers and attackers to use. It has 773 million email addresses and 21 million passwords, which beats the previously largest data set on Have I Been Pwned, which contains 711 million records. Also, because the list covers people multiple times, so because of the combinations of passwords and email addresses, it actually contains 1.16 billion email password combinations. So, think about the fact that you have an account and a password at multiple places, but it's the same email address at all those places. Some people who sadly had the same password at all those places means that you drive this number up really fast. The collection seems to be a compilation of many smaller breaches dating back to at least 2015. It allegedly includes over 2,000 databases of dehashed passwords, so they're in the clear. Collection number 1 included more than 140 million new email addresses previously not listed on Have I Been Pwned. That's a big deal. They've been doing this for years now. Almost everybody's email address that's made an account has been involved in somebody's breach with Yahoo and Kickstarter and Patreon and Target and everything. So the fact that there's 140 million new ones in there is, I think, pretty significant. The upshot of all this, Justin, is really nothing new, which is make sure that you're using long, strong passwords. Make sure that you're not using the same passwords at multiple locations, that you've got a unique password at every one. You'll probably need to use a password manager to do that, although using it in a notebook works just fine for a lot of people. But you shouldn't use the same password at multiple locations, and you should change your password if you've seen that it's been involved in a breach. Go to Have I Been Pwned, put in your email address. It'll tell you what breaches your email address has been in. And if you haven't changed your password at those places, although most of those places make you reset them in these cases, then you should. The bigger risk is that password that you reset at Kickstarter after its breach was also used in some other thing. And that's what these databases are used for. They take those combinations, and they know they won't work, say, at Target anymore, but then they try them at a bunch of other places to see if they work somewhere else.
Yeah, man, I feel like this is another one of those DTNS greatest hits conversations.
It certainly is, right?
What happens when we get into the post-password world? It would seem to me that as we now have a deeper access by the browser or even by the OS when you're talking mobile to password keepers like LastPass and the like, that this almost should be something that is more seamless than it is. Like if you are logged in on a certain level, you should be able to pre-fill out and just make sure that you're always, that you're automatically updating to a new strong password periodically that you never see, right? Because you're just logging into your own biometrically secure access point.
In other words, they should really fix this system of passwords.
Well, I mean,
those are all good ideas. And like you say, they're greatest hits. We've talked about it before. We talk about FIDO all the time and password. We're actually making progress towards getting rid of passwords and having a secure authentication without using passwords with FIDO keys and things like that. And as soon as you can build that into a phone, which most people have, then I think that really does start to catch on. But you're right. Yeah, something needs to be done about this, because this is not going to go away. And these passwords, as long as they're lingering out there, are going to be a security risk for somebody.
Also, just in the way that these things work, if they are surfacing on Have I Been Pwned, there are databases that we don't know about that are.
Oh, yeah. No, 140 million addresses showed up now that hadn't been known before. That just proves what you just said. Like up until now, there were 140 million addresses out there that weren't on Have I Been Pwned, that had been circulating around in other breaches.
Yeah, there's 140 million passwords that have been wrung dry for as much as the people that had them before wanted to wring them.
I just want to mention this real quick. We are doing an experiment for people who would like to subscribe to just DTNS without ads, but without Patreon. Breaker.audio is where Roger has been uploading the versions, and you just pay Breaker. It only works on iOS right now. They say they have an Android app coming out, so I haven't pushed it a lot. I just want to try it out. But I bring them up right now because Breaker doesn't have passwords. When you log in, you put in your email address, and it sends a link to that email address to log in. Boom.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that. All right, folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. Tim Cook, you know him as the CEO of Apple. He is also an opinion piece writer for Time Magazine, at least today he is. Tim Cook, in an op-ed piece for Time, called on the U.S. Congress to pass comprehensive federal privacy legislation. He outlined principles that should guide this privacy regulation, including the right to have personal data minimized. In other words, only collect what is absolutely necessary and strip identifying information from it. The ability to access, correct, and delete data that has been collected about you. Everybody should be able to see what was collected and modify it if they need to, as well as the right for that data to be secure. In other words, we shouldn't have all these breaches that we've just been talking about. Now, Cook recommends the U.S. Federal Trade Commission establish a data broker clearinghouse and require all data brokers to register, giving consumers access to that data and the ability to correct and delete it. Rich Stroffolino, who does Daily Tech Headlines for us and helps out the show in a bunch of other ways, pointed out to me that this is kind of a tradition now for big companies to call for regulation once they've comfortably risen to the point that the regulation won't hurt them as much as it might hurt competitors.
Yes, and I don't think that that's a incorrect point. Apple, even back to Steve Jobs, has been more pro privacy than other companies. This is largely because they sell privacy. That's their whole shtick.
Their ad sales is a very small portion of their bottom line.
And even then, they've iAds was not a success for them. They did not want to push further into that market. And so now, when you talk about data collection, you are talking about the current advertising market, right? Display advertising, be it on television or in print, is dying to dead. The way that you spend money is by buying people's targeted advertising through Facebook and Google, being the key players there. The fact that Tim Cook is writing about this is unsurprising. He's made these kind of comments before, but I want to take this one step out, Tom, and just let's talk about in 2019 is the metaphorical space between Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. as close as it has been since the Microsoft antitrust issues in the late 90s. Because it feels like the war drums are beating on not only issues like this, where Apple's bringing it up themselves, but also William Barr, the incoming attorney general for the Trump administration, replacing Jeff Sessions, was asked more. Jeff Sessions got 0 questions about tech company regulations when he was confirmed. William Barr got many, many, many more than that during his confirmation hearings over the last few days. It feels to me, as somebody who follows both, that we're headed for a collision.
Well, my perspective might be just first blush to your proposition here. The biggest companies are always the companies that get the attention from government. Yeah. Whoever the big companies are the ones more likely, because if for no other reason than they employ more people, are more likely to have rubbed people the wrong way. And because their products are successful, there are more people out there who are going to be mad at their product. That's just a rule of scale, if nothing else. And so the government's always going to be going after them. I think this is just a symptom of the fact that technology arrived. Within the past 5 years, we went from Google being a sort of still being thought of as a scrappy technology upstart, to biggest company in the world. Apple is no longer recovering from the doldrums of the 90s. It's biggest company in the world. Amazon is not disrupting retail with this online sales. It's biggest company. These are the biggest companies in the world. Microsoft is back to being the biggest company in the world from being, is Microsoft even relevant anymore? So all of technology has just risen to the top of business for these companies. And so they are going to get the ire. I don't know that smaller companies out there that are going under the radar, like people developing, robotic dogs that stand back up, are getting that kind of attention. It's the finance part of it, not the product part of it.
Okay, great dodge. You explained a lot about why this might, the roots as to why this might happen. But yes or no? Are we looking at a data privacy legislation push? Are we looking at an antitrust case? Because
no. Here's the problem with all of that. We're not going to get a privacy legislation because the Congress can't agree who they should punish. If they were all getting behind it together, and that still could happen, then I'd say yes. But right now, it's a political football, which is to these companies' advantage. Tim Cook coming out and saying you should make some privacy legislation is almost the safest thing he can do, because he knows there's not the political will to make this happen right now. But it makes him look good.
It is hard to look at where the political lines would be drawn on this. 2016, I thought, was going to be the moment when tech became a political talking point. At the very beginning of that race, you saw a little bit of the Uber, gig economy kind of a thing become a bit of an issue, and then obviously we wound up talking about other things throughout the rest of that campaign. But I feel like it's here. I feel like it's arrived, Tom, and whether or not it is something that will go all the way, I believe it's going to be something that we will be talking a lot more about this year.
Yeah, for sure. And from here through 2020, I agree with you there. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out there are multiple solutions to this problem that don't require the FTC to get involved, such as MIT's Solid, which is a distributed, secure way for you to manage your data and give approval and remove approval for who has it, and you operate it yourself. And I am very sad that I don't hear Tim Cook talking about that. I'm very sad that I don't hear Google talking about that I don't hear Amazon talking about that. Not surprised, but I'm sad because the solution is there. Tim Berners-Lee, who's behind Solid, he knows he's not going to get those people behind him. So he's trying other ways to get this to take off, and I hope it does. Thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com and facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. We got a couple things in the mailbag. David wrote in and said he listened to our assistant war discussion and made him think that interoperability can be easily achieved if all assistant vendors would allow for a custom wake world. I would be more likely to mix my assistants if I could just say, "Hey, Guido," and whichever device heard my query would answer. If I wanted a specific assistant to answer, I could use the old wake word. Of course, this presumes that I have assistants everywhere in my home, which I already almost do. I think the problem with this is even if you use consistent assistants right now, there are problems with multiple versions of the same assistant hearing you.
Yeah, we would need some kind of coach, right? Like we would need Guido would have to be something that knew the strengths and weaknesses of all your assistants and was able to find the best solution.
Right. And make sure that they play nice together when they're trying to fulfill your request if two of them from different ecosystems hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Kyle pointed out something that my Google Home can do that I didn't realize. I think maybe because I only have one Google Home. He says, Tom made the comment near the end of the show, "Hey, turn on the lights, you know which ones," and ideally it would just work. I'm not sure what Echoes and HomePods can do, but I do know if you go overboard with Google Home, it actually works like that. Set up the Google Home app with rooms, associate individual Google Home speakers with smart light switches and outlets in those rooms, and then you can say things like turn on the lights, and it's smart enough to only turn on the ones in the rooms where the Google Home speaker heard you. Very nice.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah, I don't know if the Echo can do that. No, normally we have to assign, names for each thing. So we have the studio lights hooked up to it.
Right.
Lights hooked up to it.
Well, thank you, Justin Robert Young, for being with us today. Justin inspired me to start freetechnewsletter.com because he has got such an awesome resource in freepoliticalnewsletter.com. What else you got going on?
Well, Tom, tell you what, 1 week from today, less than a week from today, on Tuesday of next week, hopefully that is still... we're still good to go, that I will be back on this show with one Brian Brushwood because we'll be promoting our new album. All's Well, a Night Attack album comes out on January 22nd. You can get all the details as soon as they happen at bit.ly/Night Attack album. That gets you on our email list. I got to say, Tom, you listened to the album.
I have.
What would you say about the album?
It is a rollicking good time. Fun for Brian's whole family who appear on it, pretty much. And folks, you know what? If they need a little time to get back to getting this album out, give it to them and then buy it next week.
If you're unaware about the concept, Stephen Cogswell is a brilliant musician. He has, for the last 3 years, every single week, without fail, oftentimes 2 songs a week, made a new original song based on out of context actual audio from our podcast. This is our tribute to him. We combined it with a bunch of original comedy from Brian and I. There's some fun surprises in there. Go ahead and check it out. Get on our email list to know exactly where to buy it. bit.ly/Night Attack Album.
Don't forget, we're celebrating our 5th anniversary in lots of ways. One of them is if you stay at the advisor or master level for the next 3 months, you get some stuff from Len Peralta. It's Len Peralta's 5-year anniversary art on a poster at the advisor level and the mug at the master level. Go to patreon.com/DTNS/merch to figure that all out. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 21:30 UTC. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Back tomorrow to talk food tech with Nicole Lee and have Len Peralta illustrate it. See you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Awesome.
Solid as a rock.
Solid as a rock. Isn't it weird that we used that theme song while we were accused of building houses in Iraq? Quote from Arrested Development out of context and with no warning.
He had warning. Yeah, solid as Iraq. I forgot about that. That's funny. So what should we call this show, Justin Robert Young? At showbot.chatroom.net. We have suggestions. Fed in from our chat room live. Don't call it a data breach. It's been leaked for years.
That's pretty funny.
It's a little long, but it's funny.
Google Watch is not extinct, but it's got some great fossils.
My Little Pony. PWN-Y.
That's pretty good. Have you never used My Little Pony?
I don't think we have.
Because if you haven't, I think we might have to.
All right. DTNS out of lane violation because with no Sarah Lane today.
Stop it.
Gotta give a nod to Mo
all
Jam.
the name puns. That's another greatest hits is whenever somebody's out, the name pun.
Show that Merritt. With great poning comes great ponability.
I'm partial to Hey Guido.
Hey Guido's pretty great. Yeah, My Little Pony. That's got to be it.
My Little Pony it is.
And BioCow points out DTNS 2907 was called Don't Call It a Soft Launch, and DTNS 2387 was called Don't Call It a Zeitgeist. So we've definitely done the Kanye thing before.
No, that's
not Kanye. Why did I say Kanye? You know, Kanye and Steve Bezos when they used to.
Steve Bezos, yeah.
Kanye? Kanye must be on my mind. LL Cool J, thank you very much.
I watched an hour-long interview with Soulja Boy.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Fascinating fellow Soulja Boy, entrepreneur. He has really dug into the Chinese manufacturing market. He has just found every way he could possibly put his name on the stuff that is like readily available to be produced out of China.
That's interesting. On last week's It's a Thing, Molly Wood made mention that a lot of NBA players are doing the same thing, especially players who have a name, but maybe not big enough to compete in the US market for clothing deals, are getting like crazy deals in China.
Well, that's more straight out endorsement. This is Soulja Boy saying, I have a video game console now.
Okay. Gotcha.
And just buying with dubious legality in terms of how many emulator games are on there, and then selling them for as long as he can in America. But, you know, it really shows you, there was a thing that we covered on Jury not too long ago or earlier this week about the new trend in Instagram influencers that they are giving away for free iced out chains. Tom, can you imagine it?
What? How do I get in on this?
So you swipe up to get iced up is the slogan from, I think it was Supreme Patty, the Instagram star.
Okay.
So when you go swipe up to get, if you indeed swiped up to get iced up, you would find that it is free. $0 it costs you to get this chain. Unfortunately, it's $20 to ship it.
Well, I mean, but that's fair. It's, you want it to be securely shipped, right? You don't want your ice to get iced, if you will.
So it is drop shipped from China
Mm.
via media mail,
Mm.
which is about $2 for the weight. And also the $100 chain that you were getting for free, you can find on AliExpress for about another $2. So
Yeah, but did you get it by swiping up to ice up? That's part of the experience. Millennials like experiences.
exactly. And you do. You have an experience, Tom. You get to experience suspense. The emotion that Steven Spielberg made a career on, because you'll be waiting for up to 2 months to get your free chain, which I guess it is free. Sure, you pay $20 for shipping, but you have to wait to get it. And then you find out that it's a $2 chain from China.
Download file is good to go.
Yes, it
Cool.
is.
Right.
So we live in a post-Monroe world.
A post-Monroe world.
Post Malone. My God, what's wrong with me today?
Wow. Yeah. You are firing on all cylinders.
Fire on no cylinders.
I thought you were making a joke about James Monroe, our former president. I'm like, yeah, we are.
That would have made more sense.
That would be the Tom Monroe.
I don't even know where I was going with that. So let's we were talking about something right before the show started.
Oh, we were, weren't we? Something, and I had a reaction to it, but I couldn't talk about it.
We started by talking about Cardi B calling for action on the government shutdown.
We did. Then did we talk about Netflix?
Oh, right. We were talking about the Netflix numbers. But I thought we talked about that before.
Maybe. Quite possibly.
Hold on. I'll listen back. I'll have to keep listening if you don't mind. Wait a minute. What's going on? Why do we have to? Netflix estimated that it now accounts for 10% of TV screen time. Are we doing it? Notable though, as improved this the directive would be followed by negotiation. There it is. So effectively, this would be such silence.
Yeah. Man. As Tom listens.
Oh, it was the bonus show where we had mentioned that privacy violations were always seen as a government risk, and now they're seen as a company risk.
Yes. Okay, so here's my hot take on that. Number one, it took Edward Snowden, one of the most blockbuster, narratively rich moments in history, for us to even talk about that for as long as we did. Like, these stories, the idea that the government has made deals with telecom companies or technology companies to put some kind of tracking or monitoring that they hope is used sparingly, is nothing new. It is something that has happened for as long as we've had telegraphs. We've had government trying to figure out a way to use it to law enforcement's benefit, right? And let's even leave it there before we get into any kind of nefarious element of it. Let's even assume that everybody who is doing this for the government is pure of heart and is only doing things for the right reason, and they're only catching bad guys. Snowden was such a unique moment where not only was there a whistleblower, there was a moment of peril where we did not know where the whistleblower was going to go, where he was going to end up. There was a cultural moment of, well, are you for him? Are you against him? And then the charges were explosive and seemingly ironclad. Project Prism was something that not only was fairly clear, laid out about as bare as you can lay out a top secret program like that, but the kind of deafening silence from the partners that were there kind of seemingly confirmed it. My point is, yes, we are now talking more about privacy when it comes to companies, but I think that is the rule. And Edward Snowden was a very, very loud black swan exception. The natural order of things is we don't question whether or not the government is invading our privacy.
But we do always complain about companies overreaching once they get big.
Yes.
Because, and that fits, that definitely fits, because like we were talking about in the main show, there is that point where companies get big enough that they get too much attention and they get targeted. And the tracking has been going on for decades. This was an issue in the 90s. They're like, wait a minute, these banner ads are setting cookies, right? And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And I'm not saying the size of the companies is the only reason, but it's probably the biggest reason that the reaction has been as big as it is.
Yeah, I do think that part of it is what your initial point was, that people understand it more. People can wrap their head around what's going on in a way that, not my grandma, because both of them are dead, but my mom, who is not super tech savvy, will be able to, can go to Facebook and then go to another ad, go to another website and be like, wow, isn't it weird that the vacuum I just searched for is now the only thing that I see on a bunch of different sites? Like, that's kind of weird and odd. I wonder how that happens. There's a natural curiosity in point to wonder about what data privacy and collection is, in a way that, I guess, here's my point about the Snowden thing. If everything that Snowden revealed, every last stitch of it, was reported in the New York Times in the biggest way that the Times could do it, a 4-part series, all of it on the front page, gigantic blown out infographics. They did everything that they could do to make it a gigantic deal. It would have gone, not on this site, or not on DTNS, but for the public at large, it would have gone away in a week. We would have had another thing to focus on, in a way that it wasn't with Snowden, because we had a guy. We had a person. We had a larger conversation. And for as long as he was in China and then went to Russia, there was the question of like, well, where's he going to go? Is he going to get extradited to the United States? It was, the white Bronco chase. Exactly.
That's exactly right. I do think that there is, when you pull back though, like that's the 10,000 foot view. It's not super close up. When you pull back to the 100,000 foot view, there is something interesting just as a social trend that within this tech coverage world, right? Because you can make an argument based on that Pew study yesterday that a lot of people aren't really paying that close attention to what Facebook's doing, tracking them anyway.
Yeah.
Right. That is somewhat within our bubble. From that 100,000 foot view, you can make the argument that it is interesting that every privacy violation during that Snowden era was this could lead to government surveillance. I don't mind Snapchat having my phone number, but what if they have to give it over to the government because of government surveillance or subpoenas or whatever? And then around 2016, around that election time, around the time people started to think that maybe Russia did something with our election, it becomes, I don't want Snapchat having my phone number because companies do bad things with my information, and then they try to fake news me into voting for the wrong person. And all of the privacy violation stories tend to point to that as the risk, whereas government surveillance, not even mentioned anymore. And I do think that's interesting, and it doesn't contradict any of the reasons you're saying. I do think it's interesting that just evaporated.
Yeah.
Poof, gone.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that there's you know, there's no doubt that these conversations are kind of evolving. I would wonder if Snowden happened today, I think it would play differently.
Oh yeah, wouldn't it? Especially him ending up in Russia.
I mean, that's an element of it that
Yeah.
there are still, you know, there are plenty of people who believe that it's no coincidence that he's in Moscow.
Well, and it's not, but it's not that he planned it. It's a enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of situation, right?
Yeah. I mean, there are those who do go where
British John Stossel.
that was a shocking revelation to me. Realize that British John Stossel is just John Oliver.
Hey folks, thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoy it, and we will be back tomorrow. Sarah's still gone for one more day tomorrow, but then she'll be back next week. And audio folks, stick around, there's more to come.